Hello, everyone. Welcome to our grantee webinar for the winter quarter. My name is Lisa Lunghofer. I'm the Executive Director of the Grey Muzzle organization, and I am thrilled that we have representatives from 3 of our 2022-2023 grantees here to share their tips and their expertise on grant writing, which is a timely topic since our call for 2023 grant proposals will open on February 13th. So stay tuned to that. There's actually Laura Merrick. I'm not sure if I don't know if she's on camera here, but there she is. Laura Merrick. I'm joined by Laura here, who has put up on our website a link that you can use to sign up for a grantee webinar for prospective applicants that will be held on Wednesday, February 15th. So please be aware of that. All right, so without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. We have Casey Brown from Shelter from the Storm and Wisconsin Community Veterinary Center, Emily Caldwell from Animal Fix Clinic, Marianne Mather from the Vieques Humane Society, and Kate Johnson also from the Vieques Humane Society. So I am going to turn the virtual floor over to Emily, and let her take it away. And and one other thing, sorry, we'll go through all 3 of the presentations, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So if you do have a question, feel free to type it in the comment box, and we will get to that at the end. And anything that remains outstanding, or if you think of something after we've ended the webinar, please feel free to email me, lisa@graymuzzle.org, and I will be happy to get your question answered. All right, so with that, Emily, the floor is yours.
All right. Take one moment here. All right, everybody see that? All right. Thank you very much, Grey Muzzle, for having us all today. It's an honor to be asked and something that I've been looking forward to. My name is Emily. I'm the president of the board at Animal Fix Clinic. We used to be known as Fix Our Ferals. You may have known us that way. I'm from Berkeley. I used to be the shelter and adoption center director at Berkeley Humane Society. Before that, I worked in community engagement for the city of Berkeley Animal Services. Most recently, I was the training program coordinator for NACA, which is National Animal Care and Control Association, where I traveled around the country training animal control officers in a variety of topics. And then in 2018, I joined the board of directors for Animal Fix Clinic, and I've been there ever since. I also have a degree from Brown University in linguistics and comparative literature and creative writing, which is not usually relevant to anything in my professional life, but since we're talking about writing today, I'll go ahead and throw that in there. So let's talk about grants. What is a grant proposal? Oh. The plea for money. Give us $10,000 so we can keep the heat on at the shelter, or we can pay the vet bills for our rescue, right? Is that what a grant proposal is? Kind of. That can be part of it. What's another way of looking at it? Is it's an opportunity to tell your story. It's going to include the nuts and bolts of your budget and your bills and what you need to pay. But sometimes an easier way to think of a grant proposal and an easier way to write it is as a chance to tell your story. It doesn't have to literally be the story of a specific animal, although those are also important, but it can be the overall story of your group and the story of the animals in your community. So if you think about the success stories that Grey Muzzle organization has us write on a quarterly basis, if you're already a grant awardee, You submit those every 3 or 4 months, and they show them in their annual report. There's a reason they do that. That's because stories are powerful. And that's an important part of what goes into your proposal. Those stories that we submit to Grey Muzzle are the stories of our organization, the stories of our animals. So how do you tell a good story? A big part of your story is really figuring out why you do what you do, both you personally and your organization. And sometimes that overlaps with your official mission statement, and sometimes it may not, depending on how your mission statement was written. Maybe you have a great mission statement, and if you do, that's terrific. Maybe not. I encourage you to watch this short TED Talk. I'm not generally a fan of people talking about leadership theory, and that's what this guy is doing. But if you can get through about 5 to 8 minutes of it, that's the most important part. And I think you'll find it worthwhile, because what he's really talking about is the why of what you're doing, and the stories you're telling, and the why of your organization. And you can click on that link, and it'll take you to a low quality video with a slightly annoying guy, but with some good content. So when you're telling your story, start with the why. Oops, there's the link. Okay, so here's an example from my organization of how we find the why. Part of finding the why is differentiating it from the how and the what. What this presenter, Simon Sinek, in this TED Talk talks about is concentric circles. And take a moment to just read through what mine are for our how and our what. So your organization will probably have a lot of difference in the how and the what, because we each have different, different structures, different functions, different logistical setups. But I bet we all have a lot of overlap in the why, in why we're doing what we're doing. And of these, the what, the how, and the why, which of them is the most compelling? It's the why, right? It's the why that lets you tell the most important part of your story. Okay, so that was the big picture of telling your story. Getting to the why, making sure that that core of what you're doing comes through your story, that you're not just telling the what and you're not just telling the how, but you're also telling the core of the why. Let's talk about some nuts and bolts of how we do it. How I like to do it, how we do it at Animal Fix Clinic, how I've seen it done other places successfully.
Emily, can I interrupt for just a moment? We are seeing your slides and your notes.
Oh, okay.
Which your notes are excellent, but I think it'd be
probably not intended.
Your slide bigger, please.
Yep. All right, let's see. I'm gonna stop and start over. How about now? Can you see both the slides and the notes, or just the slides?
I'm just seeing you.
Oh, that's even less helpful. Let's try that. How about now?
I'm seeing your slides on the left-hand side and then your speaker notes on the right.
Turn it. Okay. All right. Well, let's do this a different way. You guys will have to suffer through my speaker notes, but they will be smaller and you'll be able to see. How about if we do it like this?
I think that's a great solution. We can definitely
Okay.
see your slides better now. Thank you.
Okay, very sorry about that. I'm not sure. Did it stop? Did it switch in the middle? Or was it like that the whole time?
It had started that way, and then I was wondering if it was going to switch, and then you were just sharing such great information. I didn't want to interrupt you till there was a good pause.
Well, I will, I'm gonna just click through the slides just so if somebody is going back over the recording, they can see what the slides were supposed to look like.
Perfect.
And they can see the link. You guys could not read my what or my how. That's terrible. All right, there we go. Okay, so the calm before the storm. This is what's going on before you've started your application, before you maybe have even identified what your application is. You're looking for the needs in your organization and the needs in your community. And these may look like two separate things. For example, in my organization, we have a historical mandate to serve feral cats, community cats at a far below cost rate for spay neuter vaccinations and parasite control. So that for us is always a loss. We will always take a loss on monetarily on serving feral and community cats. So for us, monetarily, budgetarily for our organization, we need grants for feral cats. And of course, the community needs those feral cats taken care of. However, the community also needs senior dogs to have surgeries made available to them. So my organization doesn't have a historical mandate to perform surgical procedures for elder dogs, but the community has a need to have those services made available. So they look like two separate kinds of needs, but they both exist and they both have to be attended to. So make sure you're looking at what you need from a budget perspective from within your organization and also what you need in the community. Eventually the two should line up if you're doing a good job at matching your services to the needs of the community. But you have to take them both into account when you're identifying which grants you're going to go after. So before you start going after anything, get your numbers together so you don't have to start hunting them down while you're in the midst of your writing process. The minimum, you're going to need your operational budget, you're going to need your Form 990, and then what other numbers you need is going to depend on what kind of an organization you are. If you're sheltering, you're going to probably need your intakes and outcomes. You may need your numbers of services. You may need demographics of your clients served. You may need demographics of your types of animals served. You know what numbers you have. Make sure you have them all in a line. And then just as an added bonus, once you have those numbers, you can make yourself a nice little 1 or 2 page annual report or impact report in Canva or PowerPoint or whatever. And you already have all those numbers. You can just drop them into a little page and you've got yourself something that you can send out to donors, wherever you need it. Very handy. Before you start writing, think about getting some help. Grant writing is a team sport, and it's not all writing. There's a lot of other jobs that can be, that you can tap people for. So whether you have a treasurer, volunteer bookkeeper, someone who works on your database, hopefully you have some of those within your organization. If it's just you, if you are the only staff person and the only volunteer in your organization and you are a team of 1, think about help that might exist outside your organization. Anybody in your community that you know that reads and writes a lot, like high school or college teachers or clergy people or librarians, and see if they might help you out. because you never know who's an animal lover. At Animal Fix Clinic, we also, despite having a team of all different kinds of people, we designate a staff person who's a lead for each application and award, and we designate a board person who's a lead for each application and award. And those people stay with the project from the proposal through award, implementation, and reporting, ideally, unless for some reason they leave the organization, which we try not to have happen, of course. And if you tend to get the same grant awards year over year, which is terrific, it's a good sign. Make sure you mix it up. You don't want to have a pattern where one person is like the person who always works on the Smith Foundation grant, and then they've done it for 12 years, and then they retire, and then somebody else has to come in and work on Smith Foundation, and then nobody else knows how to work it, and nobody else knows how to run the numbers. Make sure that you rotate people through. Even if somebody gets really good at it, they need to bring somebody else in under their wing, so you don't end up with silos of grant writing. Choosing grant opportunities. The main point here is protect your time, protect your energy, because you're going to need them. It's really easy to burn out. Read grant requirements carefully. I can't emphasize this strongly enough. I've had so many really smart, really experienced people come to me with grant opportunities that my organization does not qualify for, that they have the information to know we don't qualify for, because we don't shelter an animal, or because we're not a municipal organization, or because we're not in the right region, or any number of factors. Read it again, have somebody else read it. There's nothing worse than getting a terrific application put together, submitting it, and then finding out it was all for nothing because you didn't meet one of the criteria that through no fault of your own. Even if you do meet all of those criteria, look at the past awards and make sure there are some organizations that look like you. Sometimes there are some subtle things that may give you some guidance that you're not going to get an award, even though you may qualify. And if you don't get an award, even though you qualify and you've been applying and you've been sending good applications for a couple or 3 years, call it quits. Don't keep applying for something you don't get. We've done that. There's one big corporate funder out there who will remain unnamed. We submit application. We've done years of applications to them. We don't know why they never fund us. That's okay. Not a good match for whatever reason. We move on. We get different funding. Planning and tracking. This is really important. Doesn't have to be fancy. We have a quarterly grants meeting. It's voluntary. But when I recruit people for the board and when I hire people for staff, I look for people with skill and willingness for grant writing and grant management. It is not a coincidence that people are willing to come to the quarterly grants meeting. It's not random. Your paper can be however you want to keep it. Just make sure the dates don't sneak up on you. Proportional spending, what I mean by that is if you say you're going to do something like quarterly vaccine clinics, make sure that you are on track to do that in the right quarters. If you say your money is going to be used in a particular time frame, make sure you're using it at the right rate. And again, track the grants you don't get. Don't try to read this. This is the point of this is just, this is how simple it can be. This is just from last night's board meeting. This is the quick view of the first half of the first quarter of 2023. Grants that prospective grants we might apply for, active grants we have and need to report on. So that's all it is. It's not some complicated database. And yes, those are real. Some lessons learned. Don't forget to include your operations and program staff in your proposal design. I've come up with some great ideas for grant proposals of things, great projects we're going to do, and then gotten ready to write them out and gone to get some info from program staff, and they've pointed out why we simply can't do the thing that I've thought of. So get your program staff to your grants meetings, talk to them first. The other thing is don't aim too high. Ambition is a great thing, but accountability is even better. So you're probably going to have to write the report yourself. So make sure you're going to be able to do what you say you're going to be able to do. What about writing the actual words? If you're uncomfortable writing, the only way to get comfortable is to actually write. You don't have to show it to anybody. It can be any kind of writing. These are some of my favorite books on writing. Check them out online, see if your local library has them. Don't try to read them all, just pick one, see if it helps you, and just practice. Just practice any kind of writing. Start building your confidence, start building your comfort. Some general tips for writer's block. There's lots of tips out there on the web. See what works for you. These happen to be a couple of my favorites. And if you want something to practice on today, you can find your organization's why. You can practice writing this particular exercise. And if you're ever in the San Francisco Bay Area, come say hi, email me and I'll give you a tour. This is our staff. We actually have one more person that we just hired who doesn't have a picture yet, but that's all of our staff who make the magic happen on a daily basis, and some of our dog friends, and almost all of these are seniors. I think this guy is not a senior, but everybody else is a senior. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was great. And we did have a request for you to put the link for the TED Talk into the chat, if you wouldn't mind to do that. All right, and I think Shelter from the Storm is gonna share expertise next.
Hi, that's a tough act to follow. Thank you, Emily. I learned a lot. I'm excited to rewatch this later. So, hi everybody. My name's Casey. I'm with Shelter from the Storm Animal Rescue. And let me share my screen with you. I am not the most eloquent public speaker at times because I'm just going to be a little nervous. So I pre-recorded my presentation. So I will go ahead and just press play and share that with you guys now. If it shows up funny, feel free to interrupt me and let me know. Asking us to present today. I hope I can give you some insight on, what we do as an organization when it comes to writing grant proposals that get awarded funding. So Shelter from the Storm presents our writing winning grant proposals. I first wanted to say a big thank you to Grey Muzzle for their continued support of Shelter from the Storm Animal Rescue. Over the years, we've been able to partner with you guys for many years and have helped countless senior dogs get the medical care that they needed to find loving homes. And we are so grateful for organizations like you that help make that possible. So my name is Casey. I am the Assistant Director with Shelter from the Storm Animal Rescue. A little bit about our organization that makes us kind of unique is that we also run our own or operate our own low-cost veterinary clinic that is called Wisconsin Community Veterinary Center. And so a lot of our grant writing allows us to collaborate between those two aspects of our organization. I do write all of our grant proposals for Shelter from the Storm, but I do not have any formal training in grant writing, so I want to make that very clear. I hope what I have to say is helpful and useful to you guys, and we've had a lot of success, especially this last year with our grants, which I am really proud of and I'm really grateful for, but I do not have formal training in grant writing. And I'm just really excited to be here with you guys today, share what I've learned, and hope to help some of you guys out. All right, so let's start with some considerations for a great grant proposal. When I start, we have to look at the big picture when we're writing a grant, and some of the main components would be a very focused, purposeful narrative. Your narrative is the chance to introduce who you are, what your organization is. You need to do your research. You need to focus on the language that you use in your proposal, and you need to make sure that your application is organized and touches on all the key elements that you want to include and that maybe are required. So I'll go in depth on each of these aspects as we go forward. So, your organization, who are you? The components of your narrative need to be concise. Sometimes when you're doing grant applications, as I'm sure many of you have run into, there will be a character limit or a word limit. I always type my proposals and any narratives in a Word document so that I can, do a word count and check where I'm at. Sometimes I have it, as I've been going through this, it's been a learning curve. I've learned a lot of things by trial and error, and I have written very lengthy narratives only to realize that the character allotment for certain sections was dramatically smaller. So, that can be a little bit disheartening to have to go through and try to take out half of the information that you've spent a lot of time preparing and that you also think is really relevant. So, but it's also a good exercise in, really paring stuff down, focusing in on how you're saying things, being concise and being efficient with your words. It's a chance to get to the core of who you are as an organization, elaborate on your mission, include important details and relevant data about your successes. For example, like for us, we can include, adoptions, obviously. We can talk about spay-neuter numbers, things like that, that help give the funding organization an idea of who you are and what you do, what you care about. This leads us into do your research. It will hugely benefit you and give you a focus if you have set a good framework for yourself in understanding the organization that you are submitting a grant proposal to. If you don't know who they are, you don't know what they're looking for, and you also don't know if your priorities align with theirs. So make sure you read through any information that they provide. If they're sending out emails, absolutely check those out. If they provide any resources, that's super great. Just knowing what an organization has done in the past is not always enough to be able to inform what potentially their priorities have shifted to for future grants. So make sure that you pay close attention to that so that you can build a project proposal that is creative but aligns with what their focus is as it relates to your mission. And then I think you might also find that if there's too much of a discrepancy, maybe that's not the grant for you, and then you don't want to, put your efforts there, and they might be better suited looking to funding from a different organization. This might seem obvious, but I think that the language that you use in a grant is super important. We do not need to be experts in this by any means, but I think it's important to find somebody at your organization that is, well-spoken and can write eloquently. I think that oftentimes, we have super dynamic staff, and people might not get to utilize those skills all of the time or feel recognized or acknowledged for those skills. So I think that, if you can find somebody in your organization that is a talented writer and is passionate about it, it not only benefits your organization, but it also, highlights that person for their skills, makes them feel, special, and allows them to grow in a meaningful and purposeful way within the organization. Oh, and also, my first point, using language that the funding organization uses. You'll find in certain grants that they like to talk about, life life-saving gap or cost per nose, things like that. And so if you can, you know, in a, not overdoing it, but in a meaningful way, include that language into your proposal, it shows that you have taken the time and you understand the priorities of that organization. And next comes down to kind of how you actually lay out and organize your application. This is something that I have found that works really well for me, is to use subheadings when you're able to throughout your proposal to, you know, outline, say, this is going to be my narrative, and here's where I'm going to talk about our medical needs of our dogs, and here's where we're going to talk about where the need is, how we're going to address the need, other organizations we're going to collaborate with, things like that. They help, you know, not only organize your thoughts as you're putting together your application, but it's also helpful to whoever is going to be reading over it and reviewing it, to make sure that you did like check, you know, yes, they've hit all those key components, and, you know, it just helps you shift things around and make sure that you have a really seamless, nice flow to your application. All right, and then our next part is, you know, included in this narrative, but I wanted to highlight this aspect of it because it's kind of why we're here, is how do we at Shelter from the Storm create a compelling project proposal? So for us, a project proposal, should address a need. It should contain measurable, focused goals. It should be creative and inspiring, and it should include a detailed budget with an informed ask. And so again, we will go through each of these components separately. Addressing a need. So your proposed project should build on an existing program that you already have within your organization, or introduce a new program that addresses a need. You must be able to provide, you know, the data to prove that the need exists. That can be challenging. Some organizations are extremely data-driven. Others are not as data-driven. I, for what it's worth, really enjoy collaborating and partnering with organizations like Grey Muzzle organization, because, you know, well, yes, you absolutely need to provide data to show a need, and then also to show that you've been meeting your goals of your proposal. They are not so hyper data driven where you feel like you don't have any flexibility to actually function as a rescue organization. You know, we can say that we want to help 200 senior, or I'll give a different example. We can say that we want to help with a different type of a grant, 100 dogs and 100 cats. But then, you know, rescue happens, and let's say we end up really actually needing to help 150 cats and only 50 dogs. And to have some, you know, freedom of, you know, wiggle room there to allow you to actually help the animals that come to you that need the help in that moment is really nice. But you need to make sure that you know, how specific the organization that you're working with needs you to be with those statistics. Next, we are going to look at measurable goals. Your project goals must be specific. They need to be measurable. This is important for any, you know, grant reporting that you're going to do. It's important for you to be able to track your progress, to highlight successes that you experienced during the grant period. And it allows you to provide a meaningful reports throughout, and then a meaningful final report in the end. An example, which I've included here, of a measurable goal would be, you know, funding will increase the number of senior dogs receiving medical care. Well, that is, you know, certainly a goal that we all agree with. It's not specific enough often for a project proposal, and you'll need to do something more like funding will increase the number of shelter-owned senior dogs receiving medical care by 25 dogs during the grant period. That's measurable. An organization can see, you know, that you are trying to increase the number of animals that you're helping, and how you're going to do that with a specific number in mind. Be creative and inspiring. You need to be mindful priorities as well as the priorities of the funder and how it relates to your mission. And then, think about ways that you can be creative and how you can stand out. A lot of organizations love to see collaboration between, nonprofit and community-based organizations. I think that we can certainly use more of that. And I think that, it absolutely benefits both organizations, and reaching out into your community and seeing where your needs are and where missions align and how people can network and come together to, do bigger things is really cool. Along those lines, then, if you do work out a partnership or a collaborative effort with another organization, getting a letter of commitment from that organization. I type up for those organizations the letter of commitment, which details, how they will be partnering with us, their history of working with us, if we have one or not, and their specific portion of the project that they will be helping us to fulfill. When we get to the Q&A section of our webinar, I'm happy to share an example of what that looks like if anybody wants to see one. Include a detailed budget. Look to examples if you haven't put one together before. Absolutely just use, Excel in Google Drive, super simple, or look to see if the funder has a specific budget template that they would like you to use, and then definitely use that. That's what they'd want to see, and it makes your life easier. You need to show exactly how funds will be spent. This budget needs to support and reflect project goals, and then, support how you're going to be able to show measurable outcomes. Included in this section then would be informing your ask. How much money should you ask for? I always like to look to previous years to see what was funded, what projects were funded, and what the average grant award was, if that information is available. It usually is, but could be a really wide range, and sometimes there's specifications on how much an organization, based on how many adoptions you do or things like that, is allowed to ask for, and there can be a cap for sure. You can reach out to the organization to, ask them if there's an appropriate range that you should be respectful of. That can help, build a relationship before you've even submitted a proposal. And it can also just show that you want to, be mindful of their priorities and not over ask. But within this all, you need to be able to be sure that you're going to do and can do what you say that you'll do. Cost per note, as I mentioned here again, how will the grant be spent on each individual animal that you will be helping? And, just because a grant says you can ask for $50,000 doesn't mean that you have the capacity to do that. If your goal is to help, 100 animals, but you want to ask for $50,000, that doesn't really shake out. So, and you can't, you just don't want to overextend yourself and then not be able to fully commit and follow through with what you say that you'll do. And to just finish this out, I really want you to be creative and realistic. I said that twice on here by accident. But be smart, be confident, work together. Make sure you brainstorm with your team. Use the people around you who are in the field that maybe are doing some things that they're working on adoptions and you don't work on that, but collaborate with them, see where the needs are, see where they think that funding might be helpful. Maybe they have some creative ideas, or that they heard something that a different organization was doing that they would like to bring over, to your organization. And also be sure to, be smart. Don't reinvent the wheel. Elaborate on programs potentially that already exist within your organization. It can seem more possible if you're just expanding on the good that you're already doing. Or, if you have a really creative new idea, don't be afraid to go for it. Just get get the information together, get people excited about it, figure out what you need to do, and propose it. It's a great time to try, a new endeavor that you might have been waiting on and to get some funding towards it. Also, if you've written grants previously that have been successful, you can take some of that language, rework it so that you're not rewriting a new grant from scratch each each time. Or if you've written a grant that maybe wasn't, you know, perfect for one organization and it didn't follow through, but you still really like that idea, you know, take a look at it, maybe make some adjustments, and then try that proposal again. Maybe it will fit, better align with a different organization. And then times to be creative and be realistic, you know, be excited about what you're doing, but don't overextend yourself so that you are scrambling to try to fulfill the requirements that you set up for yourself. And thank you guys so much for listening, and I look forward to answering any other questions during the Q&A section. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Casey. That was great. I would echo your comment about the subheadings. I think that is such a great strategy. It really does give the reviewer a roadmap to follow and to know kind of where you're going. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for all the other tips that you shared. All right, last but not least, our friends from Vieques, the floor is yours.
So as Kate is setting up her screen, she's going to be a technical person today for me. Okay, we're all set. What I do want to say is some of the things I'm going to mention are reiterations of what Emily and Casey have noted, but I actually think it's going to be a good summary for people to remember some of these things and maybe think of it in another sort of way. I've tried to put things in here to help people remember. So, Kate, you want to introduce yourself first?
Hi, I'm Kate Johnson. I am the Executive Director at Vieques Humane Society. And we are an open admission shelter and also a low-cost veterinary clinic. So when you're thinking about the way we approach grant writing, that's the programming we're thinking about, are those two components.
Right. And not only are we open admission, but there is no dog shelter or dog pound or any sort of official government animal rescue on the island. We're it. And they don't really support us too much. They're grateful for us, but not monetarily usually. And I'm Mary Ann Mather. I'm a board member and the grant liaison. And kind of like Casey was talking about, you don't have to be an expert at this. I'm just a good thinker about it, and I'm self-taught here about writing grants as well. And I'm in Roanoke, Virginia, so my support is from afar, and then I just go to Vieques once a year. My neighbors call it my mission trip when I go down and help out at the shelter. So I like to think about it like that too. So for me, the mantra about grant writing is it's a partnership, and particularly a partnership between our organization and the grantor. And thinking about like the Bachelorette show, that you're looking on that show, if you want to present yourself to be the best partner, and I want to present us to be the best partner for the grantor. And so I think a lot about distinguishing Vieques Humane Society to be the best and also the most sustainable partner that's able to deliver what I think of as a trifecta of impact for us. So the first impact is a win. So it's a win-win-win. The win is for our animals. And I picked this picture because, Lisa, this is probably the next story you're going to hear about. We have a little partnership, doggy partnership going on right now. This is Serena and Venus Williams. They were picked up on the street. And unlike the Williams sisters, this is a mom and her pup. But they're both seniors now because that pup was born when the mom was a pup. So we're looking for wins for people, for animals like Serena and Venus. And then the second part of the impact is a win for our island and our neediest clients. And we have, because it's an island, animal issues impact every bit of the community. And then we have a lot of need there. And then the third win, which is probably really important to us, is for our grantors or our donors, so that they feel like they've really contributed and made a difference. And let's face it, we can't do it without them. And so I want to deliver this impact, but it's going to take kind of a trifecta of planning, the way I think about it. And go ahead and click on that. So it's picking a winner, presenting a winner, and delivering a winner. So we'll just go on to the next slide. So in picking a winner, again, it's sort of like the Bachelorette show. We want to enter a really relationship of happiness, and not one that's going to be stressful for us. And so I take a lot of time at this point to really do some soul searching and a reality check about, is this grant right for us? And even if it looks right for us, is this the right time for us? And to be able to do that, I have to really know and have a handle on what's going on for us and what our needs are right now, because the grantor doesn't want you to present what's happening in the world, but they're going to be looking for you to explain what's happening in your world. And go ahead and click, Kate, because the question I ask myself is, if I can really explain that world, is the grantor even going to be interested in it? So I've got to do a good job of explaining it, but are they going to be interested? You might have seen this picture on the internet going around, but this is a woman, she died in the 70s, but she actually rescued over 600 dogs in her lifetime. And the way she raised money was selling photographs like this of her and these dogs. So I'm looking for that match between us and them, us and the grantor. And I want to make sure that if I find that there is a match between us and them, that I'm going to assess it and know, can I deliver and remain sane? So not just go for the money, but can I deliver? And Kate, you might want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think this is really important, and you heard it before from Casey and Emily, that you have to make sure your program staff is involved when you're crafting your proposal. And in our case, I'm the only full-time employee, so I have my hands in everything. So Marianne and I work really closely, and she comes up with great ideas, and then I go, okay, but this is the way it'll work here, or this is what we can actually deliver on. And when you get a grant funded that you've really planned very carefully, it feels so easy. You're like, this is what I was going to do anyway, and now I have funding for it. So to me, as the person on the ground, this is one of the really key proponents.
And I think the mantra there is also finding the balance between a stretch. So this is what we're already doing, but we can stretch a little bit and expand a little bit more, or do a little bit more, and not jumping off a cliff where you can't deliver. Okay, go on to the next. So once you decide this is a match, you've carefully read, both presenters have said this, you really have to have carefully read that proposal and know, yeah, what they're looking for is what we need, and I can talk about this need, and I might be able to be a winner. Well, I've got to talk about it in a really nuts and bolts kind of way. So here's some tips of how I do it. First thing I do is kind of get myself organized, and I create a worksheet similar. I think, Emily, you said this. I create a Word document, and I take that application that I've got to fill out, and I plop that into the Word document and fix it up so I can work right there. I include the guidance right at the top. What is it in particular they're going to fund this time? And I highlight the areas that actually coincide with what we're looking for. I put the word limits right there so I can have them in front of me. And if the grant is saying, you're going to write a narrative, and in the narrative, you have to answer these questions, I take those exact questions, I put them here in my worksheet, and I actually, when I start to write that narrative, I answer them right in the same order with the question right there, so that the grant reader can say, everything we asked that we want to know about is here. It's in the order that we asked for. I can see what they're asking for. I also have what I call the hopper. And Emily, I think you talked about this. So I go into my hopper and I pull everything that they have asked that I need to present with this grant so that I'm not scrambling in the end. So is it a list of collaborative partners? Is it an annual budget, a 990, an organizational boilerplate, so I don't have to rewrite that. I can just kind of tweak it for this grant. A list of collaborators and what we're doing with them. Any sorts of letters of commendation, if they're looking for that sort of thing. I pull all those things out, and it kind of makes me feel better because I go, oh, I have this much finished already, but it's really just things that I've had from before. Okay. And then you got to think about writing the proposal. I think about it as my short and my long. And so the short is really the pitch. And even if a grantor doesn't ask for this, often they do. They say, you know, in 300 words, tell us what you're asking for, and then you write your narrative. But even if they don't, I try to provide that because, first of all, that helps clear my mind about what am I really asking for and what am I going to do. But it also puts right up front that picture of, oh, I get it. This is what they need, and this is what they're going to do about it. And then I start writing the long. Now, I don't necessarily write the short first because that's the hardest part. But what I do is kind of put bullet points in there of, I want to make sure I include this, and I want to make sure I include that and include this. And then as I start writing my long, my narrative, I go back up to the short, because the short's your executive summary. And so what you might want to do is even pull key phrases out of the long part that are going to appear up in your short part. And in the long part, it's presenting the problem. I called it the what, but I think in listening to you, Emily, it's also the why there for me. It's like, why do we have this problem? Or what is the problem? Why do I need this? Offer solutions. How am I going to address it? Distinguish myself. Why me? Why am I the good organization to be able to address this problem over all those other partners that are competing? And then describe success and impact. What are the outcomes that I'm going to tell you about? And offer sustainability. Now what? Because nobody wants, even if you get funded over and over by a certain grantor, nobody wants to feel like they're just contributing. You know, remember that old movie, The Money Pit? No matter how much money they put into it, the foundation was never better. And I think it's important to show, well, if we trained other people, so now we have more hands-on work. Have we attracted other veterinarians to come so we can expand our offerings to an extra day to solve a problem we have? To offer that now what? Okay. And then if there are, if you're able to tell a story, sometimes there's not enough room to do that, or sometimes you can kind of weave it in. And so yeah, I can talk about the Venus sisters and say, we have a lot of animals like this, but actually showing a story that's going to also illustrate my what, my how, why me, what are the outcomes going to be? And then a really good rule of thumb, I think, is use consistent language. So we all know our organizations really well. And so sometimes we call things one thing and then we call it another thing. But the readers of grants don't know that. So we want to make sure that every time we refer to, I can't think of an example right now, but we refer to a particular thing we're doing, we're always referring to it in that same way. The way we refer maybe to our demographic population. So it doesn't look like, oh, they said this is their demographic. Now they're saying this, I have one demographic here that I want to use it the same way each time. And again, as I said, reuse important lines, because that's the standout. That's the important message that you're trying to send. And the last thing I think is probably one of the most important is to invite readers. And the best readers are those that are familiar with kind of your general organization or welfare for animals generally, but they're not so involved with your organization that they're going to overlook the same things that you are not making clear. And I have them read the pitch and make sure they know what's the essence of what I'm looking for. And if they go, I don't get it, then I change it so that it's clearer, and the whole proposal, and really listen to what they have to say.
Marianne, I'm just gonna add, when we think about consistent language, another thing I like to be really careful about is writing the budget and making sure that the lines in my budget are using the same language from Marianne's proposal. Marianne's the words and I'm the numbers in this partnership. So that it's very, very clear to a potential funder exactly how I'm going to use their money and how that quantitative data, how those budget and also the metrics, what am I going to measure, how that fits into the different proposals and plans and programs that Marianne has written about.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, words really do matter, and being organized matters, I think, in these circumstances. Okay. And then you want to deliver a winner. So you want to really shine as a worthy partner and for the grantor to feel that their money was well spent. And to do that, you need to collect data to support your successes and also your challenges. One of you mentioned about, well, we said we were going to do 100 dogs and 100 cats, but we've got 150 cats that need it. Collect that data, and actually we keep the grantor updated if we're finding those kind of challenges and say, look, this is what's happening. And usually you can work it out with them so that everyone is happy in the end and you've had the biggest impact. Kate, do you want to talk a little bit about how you collect data along the way? Because Kate definitely is the numbers person.
Sure. I think this is something I've learned over the years too, is again, in the same way that you're thinking about making sure you can actually do whatever project you're proposing, you want to make sure you can measure what you're talking about and set yourself up from the beginning. So when we get a new grant that I know I'm going to be reporting on certain measures, I think about what my daily work looks like. And am I already collecting all that information that I have to report on from every client, or do I need to change my registration form a little bit so that I make sure that for this particular funder, I get the information they need, so that every time a patient comes in or every time a new animal comes in, you're getting all of that. I'm a spreadsheet person, so I keep it all in spreadsheets, and I update my spreadsheets with my data every month. So when I'm going through my month numbers to do things like reporting to shelter animals count, which I'm sure a lot of you also do, that I'm also going through and updating all of and any metrics that I am responsible for reporting to grantors, so that you're not coming to the end of a year and suddenly messing with a big, huge pile of data, that you're doing it along the way.
Yeah, and I have to say, after being involved with the Vieques Humane Society for probably over 25 years, they used to do it all handwritten on paper. And then they go, I think there's a paper here somewhere about that. So Kate's been a blessing. In the past 5 years, we really collected a lot of really important data that has changed the way we do things. It's refreshing. Another thing that I think is really important is reporting on time. So ahead of time, and Kate's good at pushing me on this because she keeps track and she'll go, okay, that report's going to be coming up. And helps us to be honest in our timing, and then keeping the world informed. So this is, you're so busy doing the work, but you want to also put those successes and challenges out there and let other people know about what you're doing with this, particularly your grantors. And we try to really elevate and steward our grantors, just like we do with all of our donors, because again, it couldn't happen without them. And I know probably all of us do many of the same things, which is our social media posts, tagging the grantors. We put our grantors actually in our database so that when we're sending out success stories in general, periodically e-news, that they get that so they can see anytime it has anything to do with that particular grantor. We try to follow the directions that they've given us as far as using their logos and that sort of thing. So on the right, you see Angela, who was one of our seniors that Grey Muzzle helped us to save this year. And we try to do that with all of the animals that are within certain under certain grants. And then probably one of the most important things is just in the end, learning. So as you're doing a grant, learning as you go along about, gee, I thought I was going to do this, but it didn't quite turn out like that. Or learning from your clients about new things or new needs that they have, or how this grant is affecting them. And then even if you haven't gotten the grant, to try to learn from that. And we've had really good luck. Not all grantors will do this, but we really appreciate it when they do, where we'll contact them and just ask, how many applications were there? So you kind of know what pool you're in. And a lot of grantors will offer to either tell you how you rated among them or what could make it better. And, doesn't get any better than that, because then your programs improve and your opportunities improve. So if there are any questions for all of us. Oh, and if you'd like to get a hold of us, there's Kate's email address and our website.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you so much to you both for sharing that. I think they were great tips. Thank you to all of you for sharing your experience and your expertise and your suggestions. I think all of us at Grey Muzzle, we do certainly encourage people to ask questions, request feedback. We do offer that to share the critiques that each one of our reviewers writes of your application. So please, I do encourage you to do that with all the proposals that you write, whether you are funded or not. I think it's a great way to learn from both your success and your potential failure, so that you can do things better the next time. There was one question about why do you suggest not applying over and over for grants that you have not been granted?
And I think that question might have been addressed to me. It came in contemporaneously with when I said that. For us, it's simply a matter of time and energy. We have a limited capacity. We cannot apply for all the grants for which we're eligible in any given year. And some grants in particular are very, very labor intensive. There are some grants where we'll spend 30, 40, 50 hours on a single grant proposal easily. And if that's a grant proposal where we have 3 cycles in a row not received an award, and also, as Lisa, as you pointed out, we have sought feedback on each of those decline responses and not received any feedback, that's sort of a dead end for us. And if we were receiving feedback where they were saying, we need to see more of a track record, or we need to see you have more sustainability or more growth in a certain area, then I would say, absolutely, keep working on it. Don't give up on it. But if you're getting no feedback, you're getting no award, and you're sinking a large proportion of your grant writing time and energy into something, then I would say go ahead and let it go, unless you have a really compelling reason to keep sticking with that particular opportunity, because there's a lot of opportunities out there, and there's just no reason to keep putting your eggs in a basket that is not the right basket for you.
Right.
I have one other thing that maybe seems a little counterintuitive as a tip, but grants are very competitive and you don't always get them. And so it's really important, generally speaking, that as your fundraising plan, grants are really kind of a small portion of what's funding you, because to keep going, you need a whole lot of other things like recurring donors and different kinds of campaigns and maybe fundraising events and all sorts of things to kind of round it out. And I think a lot of times it does go back to grantors look for that sort of thing too. Like what other, I can't remember if Grey Muzzle asked, but some of the grants I've done, they actually ask you, what other fundraising do you do besides grants? And it's important to keep that in mind.
Great. All right, well, I think we are about out of time, but I just wanted to thank you all again for being willing to share your experience and your expertise. We really appreciate it. We had some great thank yous and kudos in the comments. And again, I just encourage everyone to be on the lookout for the grant, call for grants on February 13th. I hope you will all apply again. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I think Julie wrote in the chat that, that behind these calls for proposals are actual people who want to give away money. And that is absolutely true of Grey Muzzle. We want you to succeed. That's why we try to offer webinars, why we do the Director's Corner. We want to try to offer you the resources and support that will help you do even more good work. So if you have questions as you're writing your application, I am more than happy to speak with you. If you want to run ideas by me, I am more than happy to talk about them. And I would just, one thing I wanted to say about, I can't remember who mentioned the idea of, applying for funding for the same thing in subsequent years. And I had a question about that from someone this morning, actually. And, it is completely fine to ask for funding from Grey Muzzle for something that you have received funding in the past to support. I think it is just important for you as you're thinking about your application to be able to share what you accomplished with that money to date and how additional funding will help you build on the success that you've had. Or if you haven't had success, that's okay too. Not everything works out as we anticipate. So as long as you can make a compelling case for how you will use the funding to do something different or to make some modification, that is completely fine. So if you have questions as you're doing applications, please feel free to reach out. Thanks again to each of you. Thank you to all of you who tuned into the webinar, and have a great rest of the day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.